One calm word from Obama shook Trump harder than any debate ever could. And the way Trump unraveled on live TV made the entire country stop and watch. The lights were almost blinding. Rows of cameras pointed toward the stage. Red tally lights glowing, ready to beam every tantrum into millions of living rooms across the country. The town hall had been built as one of the biggest of the year. And you could feel it in the air. People weren't just watching. They were waiting, restless, hungry for a moment that would define the night. President Donald Trump walked onto the stage at a community center auditorium in Columbus, Ohio. Chest forward, chin tilted slightly higher than usual. The applause started strong, but it wasn't the thunderous roar he liked. A few people rose to their feet, others clapped from their seats, and some just held their phones up, already recording the moderator. A veteran journalist named Stephen Radcliffe sat at the opposite end of the stage, shuffling through cards. He had hosted dozens of these before. But tonight felt different. The country had been rattled by a string of crises: economic instability, rising tension in overseas conflicts, and bitter fights in Congress. People were already tense. And now the nation's two most prominent political figures, one current president, one former, were circling each other without even being in the same room. And then came the moment barely 5 minutes in. Radcliffe leaned forward, glasses low on his nose, and asked the question everyone at home had been waiting for. "Mr. President," he said, his voice steady earlier this week, "former President Barack Obama was asked to give his assessment of your administration's handling of the crisis. He didn't give a long explanation. He just used one word: chaos. What do you say to that?" The word hung in the air like smoke. You could almost hear the audience lean forward in their seats. Trump's jaw shifted, his eyes darted across the crowd, and he let out a sharp breath through his nose for a split second. His lips pressed together in a thin line as if he were fighting to hold something back. But that split second passed, and you could see the storm coming. He leaned into the microphone, his voice louder than it needed to be: chaos. That's what he said. "Obama, let me tell you something. Nobody has done more for this country than me. Nobody. We were handed a mess and now they want to call it chaos. Give me a break." His words spilled out fast, his tone already veering off course. Some members of the audience clapped, mostly in the front rows where his supporters sat, but further back people stayed quiet, their eyes locked on him. Not with admiration, but with the kind of attention people give when they're watching someone teeter on the edge. Radcliffe tried to steady the moment. "Mr. President, if I may," but Trump wasn't letting go. "This is typical. The media loves him. They love anything he says. He can say chaos. And suddenly, it's a headline. Meanwhile, we're doing incredible things. Things no one thought possible. They don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about one word, one word. Can you believe it?" The rant had begun and the audience could feel it. People at home felt it too. Twitter notifications buzzed across phones. Clips were already being cut and shared by producers. Backstage, Obama's single calm word was being set against Trump's thunderous volley of sentences. The contrast was undeniable. What made it more powerful was that Obama wasn't even in the room. He didn't need to be. His voice had traveled from an interview days before into this hall in Columbus, where it was now shaping the entire conversation. Somewhere in the third row, a young college student whispered to the person beside him, "It's like Obama dropped a match and Trump setting the whole house on fire." The person next to him didn't answer. They just nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the stage as Trump's hand sliced through the air. With every angry word, the camera zoomed in, catching every twitch, every flush of red across his face. The president wasn't answering questions anymore. He was fighting ghosts. Obama's calm, the media's headlines, the audience's silence, and that was only the opening minutes of the town hall. But the real story started long before Trump walked onto that stage. It began with Obama's single word spoken days earlier, and the way it spread across the country like wildfire. It hadn't come from a speech. It hadn't been shouted from a podium or posted in a long angry thread online. It came in the middle of a calm, measured interview. Barack Obama was seated on a worn leather chair inside a modest studio in Phoenix, Arizona, speaking with a local news anchor about leadership, responsibility, and the challenges of governing through crisis. The anchor, a woman named Julia Reyes, had been walking him through a series of questions about global instability and domestic unrest. When she asked, "If you had to describe the current administration in one word, What would it be? Obama didn't rush. He leaned back slightly, his hands folded in his lap. Bear Eaker let the silence stretch for a moment, almost as if he wanted the audience to think alongside him, and then in that even deliberate tone that had carried him through countless addresses to the nation, he said chaos. That was it. One word. No further explanation. Julia blinked the silence after his answer lasted longer than the pause before it. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like something profound had just been dropped on the table. She tried to prod him. Could you elaborate on that? But Obama only gave a small smile, that familiar half-smile that people remembered from his presidency, and replied, I think the American people know what I mean. The clip aired that same evening on a regional broadcast, but within hours, it had traveled far beyond Arizona. A young producer clipped it and uploaded it to Twitter. That post exploded, gaining 500,000 views in less than 3 hours. Then CNN picked it up, followed by MSNBC. Within a day, late-night hosts in Los Angeles and New York were replaying it, each building monologues around that single word. Jimmy Fallon made a joke about how one word from Obama got more attention than 2 hours of Trump speeches. Stephen Colbert leaned into the irony. Obama speaks for 10 seconds and Trump spends 10 minutes yelling about it. Even conservative commentators couldn't ignore it. Some tried to dismiss it as cheap wordplay, while others admitted grudgingly that it had struck a nerve. But it wasn't just pundits. Ordinary people latched onto it on Instagram. A teacher from Des Moines posted a photo of her chaotic paper-strewn classroom with a caption, My students after recess, Obama was right on TikTok. Teenagers cut together clips of Trump shouting during press conferences interlaced with the word chaos in bold white letters. Memes, GIFs, and parody videos multiplied by the hour. It was the simplicity that gave it power in a nation tired of long speeches and endless debates. Obama had boiled his critique down to one word that everybody understood. It didn't need explanation because people could fill in their own examples. The mixed messages during crisis. The revolving door of staff in the White House. The midnight tweets that sent markets tumbling whether you supported Trump or not. You knew what Obama was pointing to inside the White House. Aides took notice almost immediately by the second day. Advisors were circulating reports showing the word dominating headlines across platforms. Cable news panels had split screens. Obama's calm face on one side, bold letters spelling chaos on the other. Every outlet was milking it. One staffer privately admitted to a colleague, it's like he branded us with it. Trump, of course, didn't take it quietly. According to insiders, when the clip was shown to him on Air Force One, he slammed his hand on the armrest and shouted one word. That's all he has. Chaos. Pathetic. But the frustration was written on his face. He knew deep down that one word had done more damage than an hour-long speech ever could. Back in Phoenix, Julia Reyes gave another interview about her sit-down with Obama. She confessed she hadn't expected that answer, and she'd been surprised by how quickly it took off. It felt like a moment where less really was more. She explained he didn't lecture, he didn't rant, he just trusted people to connect the dots, and connect the dots they did. By the time the town hall in Columbus was announced, Obama's word had become a constant drumbeat. Protest signs carried it, editorial cartoons printed it, even bumper stickers appeared overnight with big block letters spelling chaos across them. It was no longer just a comment. It had become a rallying cry. So when Stephen Radcliffe brought up that word during the town hall, he wasn't just quoting Obama. He was channeling everything that had built up in the days since. For the viewers at home, Obama's voice lingered in the background, calm and unshaken, while Trump's reaction promised to show whether he could rise above it or collapse under its weight. But as soon as Trump started speaking, it became clear he couldn't let the word go. He had to fight it, and in fighting it, he gave it even more life. The auditorium in Columbus wasn't particularly large, but it felt charged like too many emotions had been crammed into one space. Rows of folding chairs stretched back toward the walls filled with a mix of supporters wearing red caps, undecided voters curious to see the president up close, and critics who had come more for the spectacle than the politics. Television crews lined the sides, their lenses trained forward like watchful eyes that never blinked. Every cough, every shuffle, every burst of applause was magnified under the hot stage lights. Stephen Radcliffe adjusted his glasses again, his fingers brushing the stack of cards on the small table between him and the president. He had prepared questions about policy, about health care shortages in small towns, about foreign negotiations with Iran, about the labor strikes rippling through the Midwest. But now, after Trump's first eruption, Everyone knew the town hall wasn't going to be about policy. It was going to be about one word on the stage. Trump rocked back slightly in his chair, tugging at his suit jacket as he leaned into the microphone. His face was flushed, not just from the heat of the lights, but from the weight of the question he couldn't shake every time he mentioned Obama. His voice spiked higher. Every time he said chaos, his hands sliced the air as if cutting the word into pieces would lessen its sting. Look, Obama had 8 years. Trump barked, pointing a finger toward the audience. 8 years, and what did we get? Nothing. Weakness. Total weakness. And now he says, chaos. He should be ashamed. I built the strongest economy this country has ever seen. Ask anybody. We were respected again. We were winning again. Then we get hit with things nobody could have seen coming. Nobody. And suddenly it's chaos. Ridiculous. Just ridiculous. The audience was split near the front. A middle-aged man in a navy polo clapped loudly, nodding along with every word. 2 rows behind him, a young woman with glasses whispered to her friend, "He still hasn't answered the question." Another group sat stone-faced, recording the entire exchange on their phones. Radcliffe tried to steer the discussion back toward policy. "Mr. President, if I could redirect for a moment, what specific measures are you taking to address the shortages in hospital staffing across the Midwest?" Trump waved his hand dismissively. "We're doing everything, absolutely everything. Doctors, nurses, they love me. They tell me all the time, nobody has done more for health workers than I have." Nobody. But do they talk about that? No. They want to talk about Obama. They want to talk about chaos. That's all they want. The moderator's lips tightened, but he held his composure. The audience, however, was visibly shifting. Some leaned forward, eagerly, thrilled at the spectacle. Others sat back with folded arms, almost embarrassed by what they were watching. The tension wasn't just in what Trump was saying. It was in how far he was drifting from the original question in the wings of the stage. White House staffers shifted uneasily. They exchanged quick glances, some whispering under their breath, knowing the night was spiraling into exactly what they had feared, a spectacle that would dominate headlines for days for all the wrong reasons. And then it got worse. Radcliffe cautiously pushed again. "Mr. President, just so we're clear, are you saying former President Obama's assessment is unfair?" Trump's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward so close to the microphone that the audio technician winced at the distortion. Unfair. It's not just unfair. It's dishonest. It's a disgrace. He knows it. The media knows it. And you know it, too. His voice boomed across the hall, echoing against the walls. They want to paint a picture of chaos because they can't stand that we're winning. They can't stand it. Some applause broke out, scattered and uneven. But just as many people sat in silence, and silence on live television under hot lights is louder than applause. Radcliffe didn't interrupt this time. He simply let the president talk the cameras, catching every flicker of frustration across his face. The audience at home could feel the imbalance. Obama had needed only a calm pause and a single word. While Trump was now 3 minutes into a tirade that hadn't touched a single policy issue in living rooms across the country, families exchanged looks, some shook their heads, others laughed nervously, and some simply stared, trying to reconcile the image of a president unraveling under the weight of one word. And the moderators, producers, and journalists backstage all knew the same thing. This was no longer about health care or foreign policy or even the town hall. It was about how a calm, deliberate word could corner the most powerful man in the world. But the boiling point hadn't been reached yet. What came next would show just how far the president was willing to go to fight a word he couldn't control. By the time the first 20 minutes of the town hall had ticked away, it was clear the evening was no longer a measured exchange of questions and answers. The auditorium had turned into an arena with every sentence swinging like a punch and every pause feeling like a chance for someone to strike back. Trump leaned into his chair, but there was no sense of relaxation. His posture was tight, his gestures sharper than usual, and his voice carried the kind of force that made even the back rows feel like they were being shouted at. His tone wasn't polished for persuasion anymore. It was fueled by frustration, ready to knock down whatever target he could grab. "You know what this is," he snapped, pointing toward the cameras in the back. "This is the media doing what they always do. They take Obama, they treat him like he's perfect. He says one word, chaos, and suddenly it's like gospel. But when I build the strongest economy, when I secure our borders, when I keep us safe, they ignore it. They don't want to hear it. They never want to give me credit." His words echoed through the hall. Supporters in the front rows jumped in with cheers, but the middle sections grew restless. A woman in her 60s clutching a folded program in her lap muttered to her husband, "He still hasn't said what he's going to do. Just keeps talking about Obama." Her husband gave a low grunt, not taking his eyes off the stage. Radcliffe, still composed, tried once more to refrain the conversation. "Mr. President, people watching tonight are looking for reassurance. They want to know what specific steps are being taken to guide the country out of its current difficulties." Trump cut him off. "The specific steps. We're taking all the steps, the best steps. Everybody says, so the governors, the mayors, they call me all the time. They thank me. But you won't report that, will you? Because you're too busy asking me about Obama. Always Obama. It's like you people can't get over him." He wasn't finished. He leaned forward, voice rising as though speaking, not to Radcliffe, but directly to Obama, as if his predecessor were sitting just a few feet away. "You want to say chaos? You left us with chaos. Weak foreign policy, terrible trade deals, broken healthcare. I fixed it. I cleaned up the mess. But no, he gets to sit on TV, say one word, and I'm supposed to answer for it. It's pathetic." The outburst drew a mix of reactions. Some in the crowd clapped again, desperate to show support. Others sat frozen, their expressions caught between discomfort and disbelief. And still others held up their phones, silently capturing footage that would soon flood timelines and group chats across the country. The moderator opened his mouth, but Trump plowed ahead. "I'll tell you what chaos looks like. It's 8 years of Obama doing nothing for this country. That's chaos. People couldn't afford their bills. The world didn't respect us. And now he has the nerve, the audacity to use that word about me. Not going to happen, not while I'm here." The volume of his voice filled the hall. But so did something else: tension. Every person in that room knew they were watching something spiral. The President of the United States live on national television wasn't defending policies anymore. He was defending his pride. And with every extra sentence, the balance tipped further. The one word Obama had dropped so effortlessly had now turned into a storm of Trumps, making each angry remark adding fuel to the fire. In the front row, a high school student with a press badge turned to his classmate and whispered, "He's proving the point. He doesn't even realize it." His friend only kept filming, eyes wide as if they were witnessing history. Messy, loud, and raw. Backstage, Trump's staff looked increasingly anxious. One advisor rubbed his forehead with both hands, whispering to another, "He's feeding the word every time he says it. It sticks harder." Another nodded, not taking his eyes off the monitor. They all knew they couldn't stop him now. Not here, not in front of the cameras. Meanwhile, in living rooms across America, families were watching with different emotions. Some shouted at their screens defending him. Others sat in quiet shock, their faith in his ability to lead. Shaken by the sight of a president unraveling in real time, Radcliffe let the ranch run its course before speaking again. His tone deliberately calm. "Mr. President, for the sake of the viewers at home, let me ask again, what would you say to the people who are genuinely afraid right now? Afraid of losing their jobs, their savings, their future?" Trump exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "I'd say they should be thankful they have me instead of him. Because if Obama were in charge, there wouldn't be a future to be afraid of." The words landed heavy. Not reassuring, not steadying, just combative. And in that moment, the line between leadership and anger blurred. The town hall wasn't just a political event anymore. It was a stage where composure and chaos were colliding, and only one of those would linger in people's minds after the camera stopped rolling. But before the night was over, the reaction from the crowd itself would make the cracks in Trump's approach even more obvious. The town hall had become less a Q&A and more a test of endurance. How long the president could rail against a single word before the room itself started reacting. And react it did. The divide wasn't subtle anymore. It was written on faces, expressed in shifting postures, carried in the uneven sound of claps and murmurs that rose and fell with every outburst. In the first few rows, supporters stayed locked and hanging on each phrase. A man in a red windbreaker clapped so loudly that his palms turned pink, shouting, "That's right." Whenever Trump landed on an attack against Obama, A woman next to him waved a small American flag from her purse, her smile unwavering. These were people who had come to cheer, and they weren't going to let the mood falter. But deeper into the crowd, the atmosphere shifted. A cluster of college students near the center looked at one another, eyebrows raised, whispering comments that turned into muffled laughter. One of them, recording with his phone, whispered just loud enough for the mic to catch. "This is why that word sticks, because he's proving it right now." His friend smirked, shaking her head as she typed rapidly, already preparing a caption for the video clip. Older attendees sat differently, less amused, more disheartened. A retired factory worker in his late 60s leaned on his cane, muttering, "This isn't what I came to hear." His wife adjusted her glasses, her face pale with something that looked like disappointment more than anger. They had wanted reassurance about pensions, health care, and stability. Instead, they got a tirade that felt more personal than presidential. And then there were those who simply watched in silence, not clapping, not frowning, just recording. Their phones glowed like small lanterns across the hall, each capturing a slice of history they could share instantly with the world. Trump, however, only seemed to see the support of pockets. Every cheer made him lean in harder, every scattered clap reinforcing his momentum. "You hear that?" he shouted, gesturing toward the applauding section. "That's real America right there. They get it. They know we're not in chaos. We're fixing chaos. We're winning the moment." Drew cheers from the faithful, but groans and quiet sighs rippled elsewhere. Radcliffe, watching closely, recognized the shift. This wasn't a united audience anymore. It was two audiences sharing one space, reacting to the same words in completely different ways. A particularly tense moment came when a woman stood up from the middle rows. She was in her 40s, dressed in a plain gray sweater, holding her phone steady as she spoke. "Mr. President," she called out, her voice firm but not loud, "I'm not here for Obama. I'm here to hear what you're going to do about my husband being out of work. Can you answer that without talking about him?" The room stiffened for a second. Even Trump seemed caught off guard, but his reply came quickly, sharper than it needed to be. "We're creating jobs. We're bringing factories back. Nobody's done more for jobs than me. If your husband doesn't have work, blame the Democrats. They're the ones blocking everything." Gasps echoed across the hall. Not because of what he said, but how he said it, dismissing a woman who had asked a personal, vulnerable question. The supporters clapped again, but quieter this time, their confidence shaken by the visible discomfort around them. Radcliffe seized the pause. "Let's take a breath here," he said carefully, "because many people in this room share her concern. The issue is jobs, Mr. President. What concrete steps?" But Trump cut him off again. "We've already taken them. We've done more than any administration in history. Everyone knows it. The numbers don't lie. And yet all we hear about is one word from a failed president. That's all you people care about." A groan rippled from the back rows, a sound of frustration. The cameras picked up clearly. Someone muttered, "There he goes again." Others exchanged looks that said more than words could. This wasn't leadership. It was grievance by this point. The audience wasn't just split between support and criticism. It was split between those who still believed they were watching strength and those who realized they were watching fragility disguised as power. The word chaos had stopped being just a label from Obama. It had become the lens through which everyone in that room and everyone watching at home interpreted what they were seeing. Radcliffe straightened his cards, his face calm. Though his pulse quickened, he knew the story wasn't just what Trump said. It was how the people responded to him. And right now, the response was fracturing into two very different Americas under one roof. But while the crowd was processing the spectacle in real time, the outside world was already preparing to amplify every second. Because in the age of instant sharing, what happened in that room wouldn't stay in that room. The moment the town hall shifted from awkward to explosive, producers behind the stage were already cutting clips. That's how fast the cycle moved now. Seconds, not hours, before Trump had even finished his rant about Obama television control rooms in New York, Los Angeles. In Dallas were queuing the footage, lining it up for the late-night broadcasts. The first wave hit Twitter. Journalists posted 30-second Dawn snippets. Trump jabbing his finger at the crowd, his face red, his voice raised, spitting out words like pathetic and disgrace. Each clip paired with the same caption. Obama said, Chaos. Trump responded like this. It didn't take long for the word to start trending again. This time with fresh context. Cable networks piled on CNN broke from its panel to air the segment live anchors speaking over B-roll of Trump. This is the president's response to one word. Chaos. MSNBC replayed it 3 times in less than an hour with split screens showing Obama's calm delivery in Phoenix against Trump's fiery outburst in Columbus. Even Fox News covered it though with a different angle. Hosts framing it as the president defending himself against unfair attacks. And then came the avalanche on social media. TikTok users stitched together quick edits. Obama saying chaos followed immediately by Trump yelling repeating the sequence for comedic effect. Instagram Reels used dramatic music cutting between Trump's rant and the audience's divided faces. Memes flooded Facebook groups. Obama sitting quietly with chaos in bold letters above him next to screenshots of Trump pointing and shouting. Within 3 hours, hashtags like #ChaosTownHall and #OneWordChallenge trended across platforms. People began posting their own one-word answers to describe the administration. Some said confusion, others said anger. A few leaned into humor, offering words like loud or messy. It was everywhere, unavoidable, seeping into feeds. Whether you followed politics or not, at the same time traditional media seized on the narrative, the Washington Post ran a breaking headline. Online Obama's chaos remark rattles. Trump at Columbus Town Hall. The New York Times posted an op-ed before midnight. The power of one word versus the weakness of many. Today's headline was Blunt Town Hall erupts. Trump loses his cool overbs critique. Even late-night shows taping only hours after the event rewrote their opening monologues. Stephen Colbert opened with a smirk. Obama used one word, Trump used all the words, and somehow lost the argument. Jimmy Kimmel leaned into satire, replaying the rant with a laugh track laid over it. Audiences roared. But it wasn't just comedians. Analysts joined the frenzy on MSNBC. Former strategists shook their heads, saying the president had played right into Obama's hands. He doesn't realize that reacting like this proves the point. One said on CNN, a panelist added, "It's not the word, it's the reaction." And his reaction tells us everything we need to know. Meanwhile, in living rooms across America, ordinary people were having the same conversations in Phoenix. A group of college students crowded around a laptop, replaying the moment again and again, laughing nervously at the contrast in St. Louis. A retired teacher sighed as she watched the coverage, muttering that word's going to follow him for months in Dallas. A small business owner shook his head, texting a friend. "I wanted answers about taxes instead. I got a meltdown for Trump's most loyal supporters." The frenzy only hardened their defenses. Conservative talk radio hosts dismissed the coverage as a coordinated attack. Facebook groups filled with posts claiming the media was twisting the story, insisting the president was right to fight back. But even within those circles, a quiet unease, though not spoken aloud, began to creep in. Was this really the message that would win over undecided voters back in Columbus? The town hall wrapped up awkwardly. Radcliffe thanked the audience, his voice professional but drained. The applause was uneven, more scattered than unified as Trump exited the stage. Cameras caught him shaking his head, muttering to aides, still visibly angry by dawn the next morning. Every major newspaper had run with the story. Every network had broadcast the footage. Every platform was saturated with memes, jokes, analysis, and arguments. Obama's calm word had won the day, not because of what it was, but because of how Trump had answered it. And the most damaging part, nobody was talking about the actual questions asked at the town hall. Jobs, healthcare, foreign policy. Those issues had been buried under a landslide of coverage about one thing, a president unraveling over a single word. But while the media was shaping the narrative for the nation, ordinary Americans were shaping it in their own way with conversations, arguments, and reflections that revealed just how deeply the moment had struck Q the morning after the town hall. The story wasn't confined to television or Twitter. It had seeped into daily life in coffee shops, offices, bus stops, and classrooms. People were replaying the moment in their minds, debating what it said about leadership, about composure, about the state of the country itself in Phoenix. At a small cafe not far from the studio where Obama had given his original interview, Julia Reyes sipped her coffee and scrolled through her phone. She hadn't expected her question to Obama to spark a national firestorm. Now, every outlet wanted to talk to her, to ask how she felt about being the one who set the stage for that single word. A man sitting 2 tables over leaned toward his friend, whispering just loud enough. She's the one who asked him crazy how one word from her interview rattled the president. Like that, Julia glanced up, offered a polite smile, and went back to her phone. She didn't need to say anything. Everyone was already filling in the story around her. Hundreds of miles away in Detroit, a group of auto workers gathered outside a factory gate before their shift. The plant had been struggling, layoffs looming over their heads like storm clouds. A worker named Calvin Daniels, still in his grease-stained jacket, shook his head as he spoke to the group.